Right, here we go. Welcome back to Red Eyes Radio. We are talking with Andrew D. Basiago, and we have much material to cover, of course, in regards to Mars, and we want to get cracking on that as soon as possible. But Andrew, you just had 2 points here again that you want to mention a little bit more in regards to the Bill Richardson question and also to David Wilcock. But please go ahead and tell us what you wanted to say more there about Bill Richardson.
Right. Well, I mentioned how, I stand by my claim that Bill Richardson was a young staffer on Project Pegasus, and that I first met him in the summer of 1970 when he was taking roll when, as a group of young teleportees, we were alighting on the state capitol complex grounds there in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and he was responsible for taking us inside the building there, which was the Baton Memorial Building, which indeed was the visual hallmark that we were looking for when we popped into view in Santa Fe. And not only that, but that he was spoken of as a future governor of New Mexico as a result of the project circulating these intelligence reports when different things that the Defense Department knew about the future as a result of its quantum access capability that was then emerging in the early 70s had gathered about future events. There was even laughter around the lunch table one time when they made reference to, young Bill, one of the staffers on the, 25-year-old staffers on the project becoming governor of the state. And I also met with Bill Richardson, and I'm grateful for the help that he provided to me during my June 2003 fact-finding trip to New Mexico. He was really the highest-placed U.S. government official that thus far agreed to meet with me. And he essentially told me that he supported my investigation and the efforts I was making, but that it would be politically untenable to publicly, do a press conference with me, at least at that point, and affirm what he knew about what the U.S. government had achieved in the area of applied quantum physics by 1970 when he was a staffer on the project, because there was no context for the public to understand what he would be talking about in such a press conference. But I just wanted to say in regard to this listener comment, Bill Richardson has had a career in which he has been the congressman from the 3rd District, which is where the United States' most sensitive defense labs are, basically where its atomic war-making capability was developed. He has been governor of the state of New Mexico, which is essentially one big military reservation. There have been trillions of dollars of defense dollars spent in New Mexico since the Manhattan Project was placed there in 1943-44. And Bill Richardson has also been Energy Secretary of the United States under President Clinton. And so among contemporary public officials in the United States, he has been as involved in the secret defense work in New Mexico as any other. And so my point here is that when I'm alleging that he was a young staffer on the project, I wasn't alleging that he was from New Mexico, that he grew up there, that he didn't have a career in baseball, or that he wasn't a Boston Yankee. Those may all be parts of his biography. I was simply stating that when he was supposed to be somewhere else, namely working as a young legislative aide to a Republican congressman, he in fact was in Santa Fe playing the support role for Project Pegasus. I didn't say that's when he began his career in New Mexico, but I want to make a broader point, and that is we have to be more discerning about the way in which the military-industrial intelligence complex has secretly governed our public affairs since the Manhattan Project, since the advent of the atomic age, because the atomic age brought with it the threat of total destruction of our planetary civilization, at least widespread annihilation and destruction of targets, for example, in the United States and in the former Soviet Union. And I think that when I provide so much information about what Project Pegasus did and I link Bill Richardson, I think the responsibly discerning thing is to say, it would make sense for the permanent secret government of the United States to develop a particular public official to play that role of the congressman from the 3rd District, the governor of New Mexico,
of course,
Energy Secretary of the United States, because you've got trillions of defense dollars that are being spent there not only on building the next generation of nuclear weapons, but also the very applications in applied quantum physics that I'm trying to bring to public light. And so I think that at this point in history, essentially it's a self-induced diversion from reality to say, well, he couldn't have been a young staffer on the secret defense project that Andy's describing because he was playing baseball. I mean, ultimately, I don't mean to be unkind to this listener, but think of the implications of that. We're talking about the person who has been most intimately associated during his public political career with trillions of dollars of defense spending in New Mexico, the need to shepherd them through the federal government, through Congress, through the president, and also just to earn the consent of the people of New Mexico, who I might add have been injured by such defense research and development activities, because not only is New Mexico essentially one big federally funded military reservation, it's contaminated with the fissile products of the nuclear development projects that have been undertaken there. New Mexico has one of the highest cancer rates in the United States as a result of it being widely polluted by the defense activities that have been undertaken there. And so I just want to kind of apply some reality here and say, well, look, Bill Richardson is somebody with a background, a provenance as a public official. And that background has been as somebody who has always been associated with the flow of defense dollars into the state of New Mexico. It's irrelevant that, he's the son of an Anglo-Saxon diplomat from Boston and a Mexican mother. I'm not alleging that he was some, native son of New Mexico that I met during those years. In fact, as I mentioned during the first hour here of this broadcast, I have stated in several interviews that it was his first introduction to New Mexico. And so, and also that my research indicates that he wasn't playing baseball at that time. He was, even though he became a very prominent Democrat, in fact, has ran for president during the last presidential election cycle here in the United States in 2008, he was working for a Republican congressman at that time. And as I previously articulated, Project Pegasus was basically staffed with Nixon Republicans. Donald Rumsfeld, my father, everybody on, Ivan Browning was a Republican. Everybody attached to the project was essentially a Nixon Republican.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you know? During that summer, Bill Richardson was working for a Nixon Republican congressman. So that's the true account, and I'm aware of the fact that he's not a native New Mexican, but he's really the most prominent New Mexico politician of the last 40 years, and I'm simply providing an entry in his biography that hasn't been shared with the public. And I'm very sensitive about this issue because I'm going to be calling on him to ultimately embrace my claim that the U.S. government did develop teleportation 40 years ago. And I also view him as one of the white hats of my investigation because he had a lot to lose by meeting with me back in June 2003. And I think he showed real personal and political courage, real decency as a human being by meeting with me briefly and explaining his position to me. And so I just wanted to sort of address him again and sort of clarify the fact that his involvement in the project is among data points, it's one of the best established because I was able to meet with him in 2003 and verify my own memories that he was a young staffer on the project.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. How about you wanted to comment a little bit more about the David Wilcock comment as well?
Well, I mentioned how I first sort of laughed at it, and then I realized that it was emanating from different postings on the internet, including a very bizarre YouTube posting where I think it may actually be an urban legend that's sort of being propagated as informational ploy. I mentioned during the top hour of your show that I thought it may have been an attempt to maybe get under my skin a little bit and try to pique my egotism by saying, well, this person's just emerging around this discourse, but what do you know? He's somebody else. And, I'll just let that roll down my shoulders like, spring rain. But the thing is that what I wanted to say is the reason I think it may be a disinformational ploy is the fact that it allows them to use the word hoax. You notice in this posting that the listener said, why is this hoax being perpetrated? And so one theory I'm having as to why this urban legend that states that David Wilcock and I are the same person, which we most certainly are not, is that my Mars data is supported, my Mars allegations, my Mars findings are supported both by highly specific photographic data and very assiduously worded text. Typically, when somebody propagates a hoax, whether it's in parascience or parapolitics or just in everyday societal discourse, there's very little factual substantiation of what they're claiming. Most hoaxes are based on mere